Hey everyone, I know this video seems a little out of nowhere, but this was a video I had planned a while ago, and I might have been a little lazy, and didn't end up doing it, well, until now at least. So I wanted to make this video as kind of a little passion project, I guess. So, anyways, let us begin. So, may I ask you something? What is a good death battle matchup to you, and what makes it special to you? Most of the time, people pick characters that they love in a matchup, or a matchup that has, well, resonated with the person for a long time for one reason or another. From stuff like how a character's abilities match against the other, to the sheer grand spectacle of the matchup itself. There are plenty examples of this that Death Battle has already done, and matchups that they haven't done that fall into this. Now, in terms of this matchup in particular, especially to someone like me, I do not necessarily care much for these characters at all, other than just I decently like them. One of them is part of a series I like, but they weren't really one of my favorite characters ever from that series, but the matchup just grew on me over time. And now it's one of my favorite matchups of all time, and when it comes up to other Deathbound matchups, I usually go for fights between characters I like a lot. For example, my Most Wanted episode I talked about a few months ago between Sonic.exe versus Red. And another fight I like a lot is Bendy versus Cuphead, with one of them being my favorite villain of all time, and the other one being from a game series I love to play a lot. Well, both of them are. I love both Cuphead and Bendy, but you get my point. There are other examples of fights like this that I like. I actually did a video a while back talking about my top 15 most wanted death battle lists, even though the video isn't great. In fact, it's not even accurate to my own opinion now, and, well, other than, like, the top ones, most of those matchups aren't even, wouldn't even be in my top 30 anymore. Or maybe most of them would. I don't know. We'll see when I probably do a top list again. But yeah, I didn't even number them actually, now that I'm realizing that. So no one even knows what my actual thoughts on them are either. But it was just a simple, cool idea at the time. But overall, yeah, this matchup is something I like a lot. In fact, this episode wasn't even on that list. In fact, I didn't even have it in consideration when making that list. But it's a matchup that I started was like, oh, okay, that's a cool idea. But then I was actually really intrigued by the idea of the matchup. And then, over time, it eventually became my third most wanted episode ever. Even though, like I said before, neither of the characters are even in my top favorite characters, or necessarily from a series I even pay attention to anymore. But this hasn't really stopped me from liking the matchup. These two monsters are creatures that were made from others as a type of hybrid, but both of them don't just act on complete animalistic instincts and actually drive to cause havoc in their own ways. Of course, the matchup I am referring to is Indominus Rex versus Sharktopus. You might be wondering why I like this matchup out of all things. Like I said earlier, I don't consider either of them of my favorite characters, and this isn't any sort of legacy matchup or anything. In fact, neither character or even my favorite character from the series that they're from. So, why do I like this matchup? Well, I'll tell you why. Starting with the fact that they're both bloodthirsty hybrids in a series that cause massive issues for a decent chunk of at least the humans that are in the respective area that these two prey upon. And they sometimes need other creatures to help even have a chance taking them down in the first place. But despite their similarities, they are pretty different in terms of how they interact with stuff. Sharktopus is more from a comedic, bad CGI on purpose film. Kind of. It's weird, but it doesn't really take itself seriously, despite all the, well, a lot of death in it. And Indominus is from a relatively, in comparison, more grounded series that is a little darker and takes the deaths a little more seriously. And I think this definitely can maybe have some fun moments, yet also being a decently serious fight at the same time. And their power sets aren't quite the same, at least not entirely to the point where you couldn't have an interesting dynamic. And this is definitely a way more grounded fight than other death battle matchups, because these characters aren't exactly known for being super overpowered, or at least in comparison to other characters they've used on the show. Since these, like I said, are way more grounded in actual capabilities. But this is a more direct combat to combat, like a brute brawl or something like that, where they use mostly brute force, but also a bit of strategy, since these creatures are definitely highly intelligent, at least in comparison to other creatures that are similar to it. And this fight would most likely be best in 3D. I can't really think of any other animations that would work with this fight, so, I mean, I could be proven wrong, but I would go with 3D for this. Now, when it comes to who I think would win this fight, I am not entirely sure. I have seen more arguments for Sharktopus winning this, but I'm not entirely convinced that that is actually how it would play out. Sharktopus should be a little more stronger in specifics to lifting strength. In terms of striking strength, I would actually give it to Indominus for the most part, mainly because its claws and teeth just seem way more usable. I'm not saying that Sharktopus doesn't have good striking strength, but I think Indominus has a little bit better striking strength. But in terms of lifting strength, Sharktopus should have this. Then, I think it's a little faster. Sharktopus, in terms of travel speed, respectively, in terms of reaction speed, they're around the same. Maybe I would give a slight advantage to Sharktopus there, but I'm not totally sure. And it might be a little more durable, since it can take, like, a big explosion compared to Indominus's RPG explosion, but So it might sound like it should win, and in ways, yes, it definitely could win. I'm not saying it couldn't. But I see Indominus winning this more often than not, or at least in the way that this is most likely going to be done. Now, you can absolutely debate me on this, but Indominus, in my opinion, is smarter, or at least in a fighting setting. In its film, it feels like it understands how to use its intelligence in a fight way more, and knows how to fight creatures stronger than the T-Rex, for example. Not stronger than the T-Rex, but it knows how to beat people that are stronger than it with its intelligence. And it was definitely winning its fight against the T-Rex. And it seems to understand its own intelligence in a fight overall more, and its claws are very, very tough. Yes, Sharktopus is durable, but I don't think it's outright completely ignoring getting impaled by these claws, which can relatively easily get through this bulletproof glass ball. With, not to mention, this wasn't even a full effort swing. This was it just sticking its claw in normally. It wasn't putting much effort behind this at all. And I don't see there's any reason why Sharktopus wouldn't be just straight up pierced by this. Not to mention, Indominus is a decent bit bigger. Now, yes, with its tentacles, it could scale up to it, but its body itself is not nearly the same size. And that means its bite is probably not going to do as much as you would think it would do. I'm not saying it would do nothing, because of course it would. It's a shark bite. But it's, well, not going to do as well as you think it would do. So for the most part, I think Indominus wins on the land. However, if this fight ends up in the water, which is definitely a possibility, yeah, there's not many arguments I can make for Indominus winning that. Yes, I still think one wrong move from Sharktopus would actually end up Indominus just clawing it open, but I don't think Sharktopus is so dumb to the point where he would just let himself be vulnerable in a situation like that. At least most of the time. Overall, it's fine. I think Indominus would most likely be able to stay on the land, but if it ended up in the water, I think Sharktopus wins relatively easily. Probably would take quite a few hits in order for that one to happen, but I think if this fight stays on land, Indominus wins. If this ends up in the water, Sharktopus wins. Simple as that. Now, this matchup would most likely be pretty bloody for the most part, based on, well, how they act in their own series. I think there should probably be people being taken out in the fight throughout it, or through unintentional or intentional means as they're fighting, maybe even both. However, based on their bloodthirsty nature, I think there should absolutely be other deaths other than the actual opponent itself. And maybe even the introduction should actually just have Indominus chasing a few people and Sharktopus getting them first, or vice versa. And whoever wins, I think, should probably be extremely injured by the end of it. And you should be able to tell that they went through a rough fight, through rather scars, or maybe with them retreating into their original habitat at the end and not being able to continue with their original hunt and focusing on, well, having their opponent as food. This matchup is a shocking one for me to like, for all the reasons I said earlier. Being characters I don't necessarily have much attachment to, even though I do have a bit of attachment because I did grow up watching both series, so that might add to the fact, but that's not most of the reason why I like it. There's a lot of reasons. I remember when they showed a picture of the T-Rex model of, well, the end of Season 10, and I think some people assumed that they would make a Jurassic Park episode from this, and I remember this one being the most popular of them, that I saw at least, and I hope, and I hope that is the case, even though I have my doubts that this will become an official episode, even with its decent popularity, especially since Sharktopus isn't all that popular in comparison to Jurassic Park and World, but maybe it is possible, and hopefully I am wrong, and I hope this episode gets to eventually shine in the spotlight as an official Death Battle episode. Now that my opinion is out of the way on this matchup, what do you guys think of this matchup? Who do you think would win? And what matchups did you end up surprisingly liking? You can comment down below if you want, and who knows, maybe one day I'll find another matchup that I surprisingly like. But anyways, I hope you guys, what is wrong with me today? I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys later. Peace.